Hey, what's up, everyone at DevOps Buffalo? I'm Dan Lyons, and today I'm going to be talking about being promoted from a developer to a team leader and the 8 things that they didn't tell me. I'm from the Rochester, New York area. It's about 1 hour away from Buffalo. I'm a Bills fan, so really excited to be able to present here today. So a little bit about me. I'm actually the co-founder of the Dev Interrupted community. I'm also the co-founder and the COO at Linear B. I'm the host of the Dev Interrupted podcast, and I get to talk to a bunch of engineering leaders. Tons of cool dev leadership origin stories are talked about on the pod. And I actually wrote a blog article on this same topic. It got a lot of views, 100,000 views. So I was kind of asked to turn it into a talk. And that's where this talk comes from today. And so just a little bit about my journey. I became a developer in 2007, a long time ago now. 2 years later, so I was working at a startup company. It ended up being a really exciting and successful startup company. 2 years later is when I became a dev team leader. I was eventually a director of engineering and a VP of engineering, but I'm going to hone in on that dev team lead experience. And what I didn't know, and what I know now, is I was not prepared for what was coming. And it was like a freight train hit me. And this is what my boss, Michael, said to me: don't worry, you're going to be great. This was my first time ever being a team leader. Michael, the VP of engineering at the time, had a lot of confidence in me. And yeah, maybe some famous last words there. So 6 weeks into my new job as a team leader, my head kind of exploded. So many differences, not used to being a dev team lead. And here's one of the reasons why. The skills that you have being a developer are much different than the skills that you need to be an excellent team leader. So some of the things that you might have as a developer: you're great at writing code. You're pretty good at reviewing code. You can troubleshoot problems on your own. And in the middle, you might have some good communication skills. You might not. It kind of depends on who you are. You might be able to learn quickly. You might be into helping others. Those kind of translate pretty well. But there's a lot of skills that you need to be an excellent team leader. Some of them have to do with prioritization or estimating work. How are you going to scale your team processes, hiring, managing up, managing down, that type of stuff. And a lot of that, you just don't get that experience as a as a developer, and you kind of need to learn it on the fly as a dev team leader. And so here's 8 things that, I wish I knew when I was a developer moving into a leadership position. And also a really good reminder for anyone that is a leader today, a dev team leader, kind of a refresher of some of the things that can make you an elite dev team leader. So the first thing is, we touched on it a bit in the other slide. Many of our skills don't translate. So, like 75% of the issues that you deal with as a dev team leader are actually not technical. Of course, you're going to run into technical challenges, and you can probably dive in with the team and help them troubleshoot, or you can figure out an architectural issue, all of that. That's actually 30 to 25% of the work. A lot of the work has to do with aligning to the business goals, setting iteration priority, estimating when something's going to be due, communicating to your boss. It might be a director or a VP, communicating back down to your team. So most of the issues are actually not technical. And these are some of the skills that you're going to want to improve on, or have an intent to think about, how am I going to improve? And we'll talk about a few ways to do that here in a bit. The second thing that they didn't tell me is, hey, you know what? And this is like a great image in the middle here of this Superman here. You got to delegate first. So there's a lot of kind of that intention of, I can go in and solve the problem. I've been doing that as a developer for a really long time. That's what I do as a developer. I go in to solve the problem. No more is that going to be a great thing to be doing. And actually, the developers reporting into or on your team will probably not like you for that too much. And what do you need to do with delegation? Well, you need to start thinking about, am I asking the right questions? So I can learn what's going on with the team, and that I can teach, and I can, scale that problem solving throughout the entire team. Also, What am I doing to coach? If I am going to go into troubleshoot, I'm going in more of a coaching role. Here's what I would do. Let's look at the logs. Let's understand, the service architecture here. That's the type of things that you want to be doing instead of diving in and being Superman or a superhero and fixing on your own, because that's not going to help your team. It's not going to help scale the ability of the team. And the number 3 thing is communicating the why. So a lot of what you need to do for your team, being an enabler of your team, being a servant to your team, is explain the business context. Why are we building a certain thing? Or aligning to the business's goals. Here, this is why we're investing into this particular feature, or this is why we're investing into this, let's say, non-functional work to help our delivery pipeline. That's understanding the business context and communicating the business context. Now, you also need to communicate some of the things that you might be hearing from customers. Hopefully, you are interacting with some customers. Here's how the feature is going to be used, or here's how the thing we're building is used. And if you can do a good job of understanding that, you need to communicate it all back to your team, and you'll see that there's more motivation from the team. The features that are being delivered are more in line with the customer's use cases. They're used more. Kind of just like the generally good things will happen if you're able to communicate the why. And most of us don't do that as an early on team leader. And the 4th thing here, investing in your team's culture, or investing in culture. This is Chris Downard from GigSmart. He's a part of the Dev Interrupted community. Awesome guy, awesome leader. And what we kind of like to say when I talk to Chris, be intentional about your culture and write down your shared values. So for example, what they did at GigSmart is they actually publish. So you want to publish and make it, public, at least for your team. There are 8 virtues. In this case, it was based on Bushido Samurai Code. So this is the code we strive to live by, and study it, know it, and embody it. And you want to do that with your team, because your team's going to have a culture one way or the other. And it's better if you're intentional about what you want that culture to be. So that's the number 4 kind of a lesson there. Be intentional about your culture, work on it with your team. Now, here's the interesting thing. No matter how hard I worked at my craft, I didn't reach my maximum effectiveness until I had the right data. In this day and age, it is difficult to be an elite leader in any industry, especially in engineering, without having the right context, especially in a data-driven way. So these next items are a little bit more focused on that. So number 5, clear a path for your people. Now, most team leaders, when they think about clearing a path, or maybe what's blocking the path, will think, hey, it's around these technical blockers, or maybe, my team is dependent on another team to get a particular feature set out. And that's true. That will happen. You do have to clear technical blockers. You do have to understand dependencies and kind of, unlock your developer teammates to move forward. But the thing that a lot of development leaders don't realize is, 1, ensure that you're aligning to the right priorities, and also ensure that your people know what the right priorities actually are. So in a stand-up, for example, one question that I like to ask is, what is your number 1 priority? Or do you know what your top priority is? And oftentimes you'll see, from a developer kind of answering, it's a wishy-washy response, which is obviously going to lead to not hitting the iteration on time, or essentially just time wasted, not working on the right things. And the other thing you'll see, like the green star at the bottom, shallow work and unclear priorities are the top killers of team productivity. What shallow work refers to is the team working on something that's not necessarily in your iteration, or what you want to deliver in your particular sprint, or if you're working in Kanban that week, top priority items. It's really easy for a development team to work on something that's not actually that important, and we call that shallow work. So ensuring that your team and checking in that your team knows the priority or has the right priority or is confident that they're working on the right thing, I found that to be very important in order to clear a path for your people. Now, the number 6 item here, optimize non-coding time. This is pretty interesting stuff. There's a lot of development tools out there that will help to optimize coding time. Auto-complete your code. There's really cool IDEs out there, and you might be able to save a few hours a day or whatever it is during the actual coding time, hands-on development. There's a million tools out there. But one area where there's not as many amazing tools is that non-coding time, whether it's around attending meetings or updating, project tickets, or the code review process, reviewing code, reading code, understanding where your code is. Is it waiting on someone else? Is someone waiting on you to do a review? Is your code released to production? That type of transparency. This is where I feel like you can actually get a lot of bang for your buck. And we did a study led by, we have a team member named Hadar at Linear B, and she's doing some really interesting work studying non-coding time. And what we found is about 50% of all pull requests. So at Linear B, we're actually able to analyze a lot of PRs, hundreds of thousands of PRs. 50% of pull requests are idle for 81% of their lifespan. Now, for example, that could be due to just, hey, I don't know that someone's waiting for me to review changes, or I received a set of comments back. It can be due to being overloaded with work and no one being able to review the pull requests. And we are doing some really interesting stuff at Linear B to help optimize this area. But if you can think about making your team more effective in the non-coding time, that's where I actually think you can get your best bang for your buck, save your developers time, get people home earlier, complete your iteration on time. I thought this one's pretty cool and something to think about. Optimize non-coding time. The number 7 item here is around managing up. And this is a few screenshots from the Linear B product here. Managing up is just as important as managing down. So managing down, when you think about that, that's your interaction with your developers. Again, some of the things that we talked about. Do we know what the right priority is? Do we know why we're building a certain thing? Are we unblocking our developers, optimizing that non-coding time? But managing up can be, even more difficult. And that's aligning back to the business. So what you see here in this area is in Linear B, you'll be able to see the projects that your team is working on. Your team might be working on multiple projects depending on the size of your team. And this allows you to go back to the business and say, hey, this first project over here named Linear B, well, I have about 53% of the team's effort is going to that project. Is that the type priority? Is that what we should be working on? Does that align with what is important for the business? And for the second project, called Linear B Continuous in this case, if about 31% of the team's effort is going there, is that kind of our second priority? And always checking in with the business makes sense so that you're in line kind of with what your boss's expectations are. And it's also allowing you to set your team up for success. You want your people working on the most important items. And of course, we have, things here like the planning accuracy. How is each iteration going for your capacity planning? How are we doing delivering against your goals? But really even just getting aligned on, are we working on the right things, and having that shared view to manage up will make your life a lot better, a lot easier, and take, some of the worry or pressure off yourself. And the other area down here, kind of just dialed into this investment per type, or I like to call it investment profile, show alignment to business priorities. In this case, we're seeing, 43% of our effort is on those functional stories, new feature delivery. 22% is invested into non-functional stories, maybe back-end work or things to improve your CI/CD pipeline, and 18% on bugs. And that's something as a team leader, you can ask yourself a few things. Well, one, should we be investing into this much effort into bugs? 18%, almost 20%. Is that a symptom of something that's, not right with the code, or something we need to do to improve our quality? That might be the case, something to dive into. But also what I see, for example, is you might have communicated to your boss or superior, hey, we really need to work on non-functional work. We need scalability of our services. We need to invest into our login, the time it takes for a piece of code to run through our CI or get deployed is too slow. And I want to make sure that we have at least, for the next few sprints, 50% of our effort going there. Well, we only have 22 right now. So you can also kind of ask yourself, is what's happening reflective of what I've communicated? So this is, pretty important stuff, and something that I wish I knew. And, number 8 here, measure the delivery process, not just individual output. And so, if you're up to date on some of the metrics that describe a healthy engineering organization, you're going to want to know your team's cycle time. And it's always around measuring the process and not people. Measuring people honestly goes nowhere in engineering teams or organizations. Measuring process is amazing. So in this case, if you understand your cycle time, you can see how much time on average the team spends on coding on a branch versus, how much time it takes before a pull request is actually picked up for review. In this case, you can see in red here, the review of the PRs on average is taking 5 days. Well, there's your team's bottleneck. If you go and fix this for your team and talk, hey, what's going on here in these reviews, that's going to unlock the optimum potential for all the people on your team. So, know your cycle time, know what your deployment frequency is, how often are we releasing, your MTTR, your mean time to restore. If you have a service issue in production, how long does it take to actually restore that service? And of course, your change failure rate. Every time we deploy, how often is there an issue? These are your classic, DORA metrics. And, really wish someone told me about these when I became a team leader, because it describes the health of your processes. Very important to know. Now, I've kind of dedicated myself to helping engineering leaders based on this experience. And so what I've done at my company, Linear B, is we have a great product that helps with all of these things so that you can confidently lead your engineering team with our 3-pillar system. So we have kind of that projects view that you saw earlier in the presentation around aligning to the business. Are we working on the right things? Can I manage up and communicate to my boss what we're working on and why? We also provide all of those metrics that I just talked about. Measuring the process, measure delivery process, your cycle time, your deployment frequency, your MTTR, your change failure rate. That's going to describe the health of your delivery pipeline and identify bottlenecks. It will find areas that you can focus on as a leader that will make everybody else on your team more effective. And we also optimize that non-coding time that we talked about. That's where you can get a lot of bang for your buck. We have a really interesting tool called Worker Bee that you can put into the hands of all of your developers. And what that does is allow them to understand if someone's waiting for them on a pull request to do a review, or if they've requested changes, or if their code has made it out into production. And it also has some really interesting machine learning built in that will let them know, hey, this PR will actually take 10 minutes of your time to review based on your prior review patterns. So if you get this 3-pillar system, and this is what we've made in the Linear B platform, we've seen that has allowed engineering leaders to become elite at their jobs and help all their people. So if you want to get a demo or you want to sign up for a free account, you can go to linearb.io. And if you're interested in joining the Dev Interrupted community, that's where we're talking about this kind of stuff all the time. You can hit up our Discord channel, which is listed in the link in the bottom right-hand side. And last but not least, on November 4th in 2022, we're going to have our Linear Beyond event. And so if you want to register for that, again, it's great for engineering leaders. You can go to linearb.io/beyond. And this is where we're going to unlock some of our proprietary research that Hadar has been working on from our team. And you're going to get a sneak peek into what we've learned from studying, 700, 800,000 pull requests and a lot of comments and a lot of developer interaction. And a lot of it is around that non-coding time. So I'll make that available to you all here. So thank you so much for attending my session today. And I hope that this has been helpful. Again, I'm Dan Lyons from LinearB and from the Dev Interrupted community. Have a great rest of your event. See you, everyone.